Welcome to Recalculating Small Business. Like its award-winning book, Recalculating is dedicated to small business in America. Your hosts are Don Mazzella and Dan Perkins. Don Mazzella is the editor-in-chief of the Small Business Digest. Dan Perkins is a registered investment advisor with 43 years' experience in managing money.
Dan Perkins here, your co-host, along with Don Mazzella of Recalculating for Small Business. Our radio program is dedicated to you, helping the small business owners increase their profits. We draw our name from Recalculating, voted the best small business book of 2017 by the Independent Press. In this book, it features ways to grow your small business. Now, here's Don Mazzella.
Dan Perkins, my co-host, is on assignment, but here to talk about franchising in general and specifically for millenniums is Tom Portesy. Tom, welcome to the program. I know you wear several hats, so I'm going to ask you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your company and your forthcoming event.
Well, thanks, Don, and thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. As you mentioned, I'm with MFV Expositions, and we are a trade show organizer specializing in a number of industries, but have been involved in the franchise industry for over 25 years. I'm currently president CEO of MFV and have had the fortunate happenstance to have worked with franchisors throughout that 25 years plus time in this. So we produce events. Our exhibitors, our clients, are franchise companies looking to grow, and our attendees are people who are considering going into business for themselves and have identified franchising as a very logical way to do that.
And your website?
The website is MFV, like Mary Frank Victor, MFVExpo.com. And that will list all of our shows here in the U.S. and around the world.
Okay, Tom, let's step back. Franchising has both a good and a bad name. The good thing is it's put a lot of people into business and made a lot of successful people. The bad is that some people have taken advantage of the franchise system. But why should a person look at a franchise today, especially with the economy booming as it is?
Well, franchising, the saying, you've heard it, Don, for so long, it's probably makes people's like gag almost, but it's so true. I mean, franchising lets you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself, right? So when you purchase a franchise, you've got a team with experience that's there to help you, support you, train you, get you started, walk you through problems, help you avoid landmines that so many businesses aren't able to avoid, and in so many cases, those mistakes are fatal. So franchising is just going to give you that edge with a proven brand and a proven system.
Well, one of the things we saw in the note that was sent to me was that you're looking now more at millenniums taking over franchises. And what's happening in the world today of franchising?
So, franchising appeals to just about every right. There's no group of individuals that in any bucket that you could place them in that doesn't have some franchise concepts or industries that make a ton of sense. But as you pointed out, millenniums, I think, are kind of unique in approaching franchises now more so than ever before because they don't have the patience we had, and I say we. I'm 59, so the thing was you go to work for somebody, you learn the business, you go to work for a company. At some point, you develop the skill sets and the experience, and if at that point you want to go into business for yourselves, you've developed it. Well, I have 4 kids. Their patience aren't the same as ours were, and they want to be in business for themselves yesterday. They want to come in, they want to get into the workforce fairly quick, and they want to own their own business, and franchising would give them the vehicle to do that. Right? If they're hardworking, they could follow directions. They're used to having a plan that they could work, and that's what franchising is. So they could kind of leapfrog the whole middle process, and we're seeing more and more of that.
Well, I go to your shows throughout the country, and I've been looking at franchising and talking franchising for over 25 years, like you. And I seem to be seeing a difference in the people that are moving into franchising. I'm seeing more ethnic groups and more, yes, millennials, but also people in mid-career. Is that true? Am I wrong in that?
You are right on the money. You're right on the money. I think as franchising becomes more well known, and for guys like you and I who've been doing this for so long, it's always surprising how many people don't know about franchising. How many people still think franchising is food and $1 million. And they don't understand there's no industry that's not involved. But the more educated they become, and you know, the web has certainly played a huge role where you can find any information you want online, they become more involved, and each of these groups get more involved in franchising and see opportunities that they wouldn't have known about.
That's true. On this program in the past, we've had franchising companies and franchisees. And what I'm always struck by is the diversity of the people that are there, and I guess the thing that surprises me is the high success rate. When I first got into this, when I ran Income Opportunities magazine years ago, there was a failure rate, but it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the failure rate is less in recent years than in past years. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, I would say that, again, because franchisors are becoming more sophisticated, they're able to provide their franchisees, which are really their business partners, a better understanding, better tools. So, you know, I think that franchising is going to put these people in a situation where the failure rate is going to be extremely low if they do this, and this. Right? I mean, there's business is business, and things happen, unfortunately. If you could remove much of the risk, if you could remove, a ton of the problems that would normally exist, your success rate is going to dramatically increase, and certainly that's what happens in franchising.
But see, that's the point. You have to follow the franchise's rules in order to be successful. Yet, what I've seen in the past, and in fact saw recently here in New Jersey, is that the failures occur because people don't follow the franchisor, but strike out on their own. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, you mean people in franchising themselves, or are you talking about people in business?
The franchisee doesn't follow.
Right. So in many cases, now people, franchisees are doing well and they're humming along, and they say, okay, well, I think we could do this, and the franchisor says, well, that's not what we want you to do. Your franchise agreement says you can't do this, or just, even if it's not against the franchise agreement contractually, it puts them in a position where they are just going against what was recommended, and failing to realize that what was recommended to them was things that were done because of, again, this proven system, because they stepped on that landmine before, and they could help them avoid it. So when they do that, because the other thing too, Don, as you know, franchising, a franchisee isn't a true entrepreneur. And it's a quasi-entrepreneur. They want to be in business for themselves. They want to control their own destiny, but they didn't want to go and strike out on their own. There was some apprehension, some fears, some concerns about going and doing it all alone. So that's why they decided to buy a franchise, and they have to keep reminding themselves of that. Now, that's not to say that franchisees haven't led an amazing, they haven't led the franchisor in a lot of innovation. It happens all the time, but it's something that has to be talked through, and they have to look at it from all different angles.
Well, you're absolutely right, but we hear that the millenniums, these younger people coming up, really are independent-minded and feel that they know better than their elders. And I happen to know in one case.
Sounds like my children.
Sounds like me with my father. But amazing how smart he became. But the point is that they seem unwilling to. They want to kick over the traces and of prior experience and prove other people wrong, and that seems to be a tension point with some millenniums in the franchise industry. If again, what we're hearing and seeing in various places is true.
I think that's the case, but it's funny as you're saying that, Don, and you kid about that's what your father used to say. I'm sure that's for the last 200 years they were saying exactly what we're saying. We just happen to be in the other side of it now, right?
Yes. So,
unfortunately. But so it's. I don't think they're any different. We could call them any term. They're young people coming out, maybe a little bit smarter than we were, maybe less patience than we had, and I suspect that's been the case generation after generation after generation. These millenniums are going to do some remarkable things. They seem to be simultaneously having lots of ambition, a thirst for knowledge, socially committed. They seem to have a lot of stuff going on.
You're absolutely right. But let me go on to another topic. Again, it's based on visiting your shows and others. But it seems that older parents are buying franchises for their children. Is that a trend that you're seeing?
That's a great point. And, like you, I've been doing this for this long, and we've gotten to know lots of different franchise companies. And again, I have 4 kids and lots of student loans and lots of things like that. And you say, okay, well, they're going to come out, they'll do okay, and they'll do this. Or why don't I take advantage of the opportunity now? Why don't I take advantage of an opportunity where, you could start making some money. They could run that business from afar. I mean, us, stay very removed from it. Give them an opportunity, and that helps retire some debt and so on and so on. And it's not $1 million. It's it's a situation where there's franchises for everyone, not only industry but investment levels. Right? You say you go to the shows, as you see, you'll see people at our shows from $10,000 to $10 million and everything in between, and so much of that is now financeable. So these kids coming out, there's opportunities that are there that may not have been there before.
Very, very definitely. And what always amazes me is people come up with concepts. Like I just found out, and I'm sure you know about it, that there's even dog walking franchises and dog food making franchises, which again surprised me, but I actually know somebody that has bought a franchise for dog products. It's just amazing. But having said that, Tom, what are some of the questions people should be asking when they go to a show or they go to look at any franchise?
Well, what they have to do, right? So they're going to make a huge decision, and despite what anybody tells them, they're going to work really hard. Certainly the first few years, right? You're not going to buy a franchise and sit on your laurels. I mean, if you want to be successful, you're going to work hard. So they need to find out what is a typical day. What happens? What are you looking to do? I mean, aside from getting past the financial aspect, what's the investment level? What do I need to be liquid for? How are these payments made? What kind of, what part of this can I finance? Can I lease equipment, and so on and so on? Then it comes down to, okay, here's a group of companies that fit that, that parameters where you can afford and you have the skill sets. Now, what am I going to love doing? Because I am going to work hard, certainly in a few years. So you got to narrow it down. I recommend to everyone who is thinking of coming to our shows to go online and to interact with the exhibitors long before you get there. so that by the time you get there, you have spoken to a number of them. You could do queries based on, investment level or industry. See ones that, you definitely want to get to, schedule some time with them, and then, visit the rest of the shows and see what else is there.
Oh, that's good. Good advice. We're talking with Tom Portesy. He is president of MFV Corporation. Tom, your website for people and how people can learn more?
Well, if they go to MFVExpo.com, they will see a series of our shows, the 4 we do here in the U.S. and the shows we do around the world. They'll also see some information on some online products that they could use to find out more about what opportunities are out there. So MFVExpo.com.
Well, you just opened an interesting line. What are the differences between franchising overseas and franchising here?
Well, again, the laws make a big difference, right? We have very specific disclosure laws. So you can't just go somewhere and buy a franchise and meet a person and sign an agreement and get out. I mean, there's laws of what has to be disclosed to you, when it has to be disclosed, how much time do you have to have prior to making a decision. That's not the case in some countries. In some countries that they don't have those stringent requirements by a franchisor. But you're seeing more and more of that come into play. Franchising has always been something that we, as the U.S., have exported, right? So we've been the exporter of franchise concepts for 70 years, and I think what we're seeing more and more and more are very good indigenous franchise companies around the world. So you're seeing, as an example, we do a show in Mexico City. I would say that 15, 20 years ago, 70% of the concepts were master license owners of U.S. brands. So it was the person who owned Pac-Mail for Mexico. It was the person who bought the master license rights to Dunkin' Donuts and so on and so on. I would say it's almost flipped, where 70, 80% of the exhibitors at our show in Mexico City are companies that are indigenous to Mexico. So I would think the next big trend we're going to see is U.S. importing really good franchise concepts as well as exporting.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because at your show, your last show in New York, we saw one for the British tea shop, which was literally building a English tea shop here in the United States. And the unfortunate part, I thought they were totally unprepared to really understand the American market. But I thought they had such a great concept. And I asked them to appear on the program, and they did no follow-up. And it was just an interesting concept, and it's exactly what you said.
Well, your point is really the point, right? So you have this great concept. You have a company that has, a really cool infrastructure to take advantage of that concept, but they don't know the U.S. market. So they come here looking for partners. They come here looking for people. You typically are not going to sell the U.S. as a master license, right? It's just too big. But what you may do is you may start to sell little areas, and I say little areas, a state, 2 states, a county, depending on the concept, so that you bring somebody on board who is going to have not only a vested interest financially in doing it, but it's going to give you the insight to things about the U.S. market, because it is a challenging market. But it's such an amazing market for companies that now you're seeing more and more of them say, listen, we're happy to clear the hurdles necessary to come to the U.S. because the upside is so great.
Well, I'm going to throw a real curve at you now. Do you think that you're going to see marijuana franchising in the near future?
Well, you're seeing marijuana-related companies, franchise companies already. So, that does exist. The cannabis industry is just exploding. And it's exploding not only because state seat revenues. I think it's exploding because it's going hand in hand with what we're learning about opioids and the horrible, addictions that stem from these opioids, and it couldn't be news to everybody that these things have become addictive, but I think now so more than ever, companies are saying and people are saying, listen, there is an alternative to it. And I'm not a huge cannabis advocate, but the difference between that and these opioids that are killing so many people, that's going to be a big reason you're going to see more and more of it, I believe.
Do you
so
have any
anytime there's a growth, you're going to see franchising involved. And that's what's happening. So right now what you're seeing is franchise companies that are peripheral to the industry, where they may sell the products and services associated with it, but not the actual dispensary.
Well, what are in the few minutes we have left, what are the trends in franchising? What are the franchises that seem to be attracting the most attention, the most investment?
It's kind of hard to say because it's so specific to the individual skill sets, to the investment level people are looking to make. Again, 25 years ago, you and I would look at the list of industries and say we can count them. You just can't count them anymore. That franchising is touched. I always use an example when they come to our show. They'll say, well, what are some of the kind of companies we'll see? I say, well, you'll see a number of companies in the child care, senior care, and pet care. Right? So there's nothing they don't touch, from whether it's bathroom refinishing or car refinishing. Every type of food and different all types of food, not just restaurants, but from ice cream to pizza to full-scale restaurants. There's really not a service business I could think of, a B2B business, whether it's signs or printing or whatever, that's not touched by franchising and not represented. So I think you have to determine what investment level you're looking to make. Where do you see it? What the skill sets you have, and are they going to fit with that? And then find the business that you're going to be passionate about, because you're going to, you're certainly going to be married to it and work really hard during that time.
Well, that's true. I could give you more specific. In a survey we did for our audience, the investment level, the average investment level was between $250,000 and $350,000.
Mm-hmm.
So in that range, what would be some of the trending? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that sounds really logical, because I would say that if you had to put them in buckets, that's probably the bigger average, right? But in that case too, if it's a $250,000 investment, they're not looking for the franchisee to be liquid for $250,000, right? They're looking for the franchisee to have a franchise fee of $30,000, to be able to put deposits on real estate and things they're going to need of X, to keep X amount of dollars in their bank for working capital. If there's equipment involved or inventory, they're probably going to be able to finance or lease it. It's a great sweet spot for most people. Right, so let's say they had to be liquid for X, and we say liquid. It could be cash in a 401k, it could be equity in a home. That is liquid to the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're talking with Tom Portesy. He is president of MFV. And Tom, your website again, and when is your next show, and where is it?
The next show we're doing is in Chicago, and that's coming up. How about that? It is coming up September 14th and 15th. It's a 2-day show at Rosemont Convention Center. And, we'll see 150 different concepts covering, as I say, just about every industry you could imagine, and having investment levels from under 10,000 to over $1 million, and everything in between. Lots of seminars, a lot of free seminars. People can go and find out about, what steps they should take in narrowing down and purchasing a franchise, what opportunities are there, and what resources to finance. And in some cases, there's seminars that just talk about the A to Z's of buying a franchise. What is franchising? Why should you do it? And open dialogue, roundtable discussions.
Well, those I found in your shows that I've attended have been the most illuminating for people who are just entering the field. So I really suggest people go, if not to expand their general knowledge, because there's where you really learn.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're exactly right. You're exactly right, Don, and I think that's great advice for anyone who's coming to the show. But this specific show, they could find us at franchiseexpomidwest.com.
Good.
So they'll find that on our MFV website, but if they wanted to go specifically just to this one, the easier way to do it is to just go to franchiseexpomidwest.com.
We've been talking with Tom Portesy. To that website will be on recalculating.biz tonight, where you can hear this and every other past and future Recalculating show. Tom, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to running into you at the next show.
Tell me, Dan, tell me about your latest book.
My current book that's coming out, I should say, is Why Can't Grammy Remember Me? And it's really the first book written for children between the ages of 9 and 12 and their families dealing with dementia. Dementia is a growing problem with the elderly in the United States and around the world. And we are not very well informed about what's going on, what's happening. So I wrote this book in the form of a mystery. And I have two little girls, 9 and 12, who have a magical power to seem to be able to find things that are lost. And so they go to their dads and moms and they say, we work all over the neighborhood helping people find things, and we seem to find things. And their dad says, yes, you have a magical talent to do that. And they said, we'd like to start a business to see if we can help other people. So they decided to start a business. The two girls' names are Hudson and Charlotte. And they start H&C's Lost and Found. If you've lost it, we find it. And so they build a business, and they convince the dads to build them an office and a treehouse in the backyard. And they get busy making posters and flyers trying to get customers. And their dads take them downtown, and they put them in the windows and on the telephone poles and light poles. And they go home, and first week goes by, and nobody comes. And the second week and third week, and nobody comes. They're really, really dejected. And the fourth week comes, and there's a knock at the door. And they walk over and open the door, and there's a young man standing there with one of their flyers in his hands. And he says to them, my dad says the reason why my Grammy can't remember me is because she's lost her memory. And your flyer says you find things that are lost. Can you find my Grammy's memory? Well, they don't know anything about memory. So they take his name and they go see their dads to see what can happen. And the story evolves into how they learn about what dementia is and what's going on in the body when somebody has dementia. And then they decide, while they can't find their customer's memory, they can help him build the tools to retain her in his memory. And so at the end of the book, there are about 10 to 12, 13 things that families can do together to work on to preserve the memory of Grandma and Grandpa, so the generations can know who these people were. And that's the story.
What a great book. When will it be available, and how can people get it?
Well, it'll be available on Amazon.com. A lot of people who have read it, who've had moms and dads that have been stricken with Alzheimer's or dementia, tell me that they really now begin to understand what's happening in Grandma's brain. And we took a different approach. Rather than do the typical brain cross-section, I work with the artists, and we design highways in the brain. And there's a brain of one of the little girls and the brain of Grammy. They both have highways, roads, but the girl's brain, everything is green and go. Grammy's brain is full of no left turns, do not enter, stop, no right turns. So all of the messages that need to come from our brain get screwed up, and we can't function. Great illustrations, though. Wonderful illustrations.
Well, say goodbye, Dan.
All right.
Time for us to go.
Thank you for joining us. And by the way, if you didn't hear all of today's show, you can go to recalculating.biz, and you can pick up this show and past shows to expand your knowledge as becoming more successful entrepreneurs. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Want to know more about health savings accounts for your company or yourself? Go to 2hsa.com and get a free employer's primer. Health savings accounts are a cost-effective way of offering health care benefits to your employees and yourself. HSAs build retirement funds for your employees, improve morale, and reduce your health care benefit cost. For a free employer guide to HSAs, go to 2hsa.com. That's 2hsa.com.
Dan Perkins here from recalculating.biz with your featured book. I want to tell you about a recent interview I had with Bob Bethel, a turnaround specialist with lots of success in small business. Bob's new book is Strengthen Your Business, Fail-Proof Strategies for Small Business. He tells us of his life successes and failures that have made him and his clients so successful. Over the years, Bob has brought 77 companies back from the brink and changed them into thriving, profitable businesses. His energy is amazing, and at 74, he proves that you can still have a great deal to give others if you just try. His suggestions are easy to understand and very helpful. One insight struck me was that most companies do not have a plan. The old Chinese proverb says, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there, is true today. Bob Bethel's book, Strengthen Your Business, can be found at Amazon.com or can be ordered at your local bookstore. This has been Dan Perkins with your Recalculating.biz featured book.
My co-host, Dan Perkins, is on assignment, but we are lucky enough today to have Spencer Borisoff with us. Amongst other things, he's got a terrific new book, and he's here to talk about the 4-day work week, which I believe is really one of the most efficient ways of doing things. Spencer, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here today, Don. Thanks for having me on.
Well, as we ask with all our guests, Spencer, tell us first a little bit about your background, then a little bit about your book, and finally, your website.
Okay. My background is I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was the son of a singer and songwriter and record producer. I went to the University of Pittsburgh and graduated with a journalism degree, and I was a reporter out of school for a number of years. I left reporting to get into sales because I couldn't make any money reporting. And for the last 25 years, I've been in corporate America, experiencing an unbalanced work-life system. And I wanted to put my background in writing to use in combination with my 2.5 decades in the corporate world to write my new book entitled Work Sucks, A Funny View of a Serious Problem. It's a funny book, but it's dripping with pain as it covers, my Molotov cocktail of emotions that threatens to blow my world sky high every day, which a lot of people can relate to. And my website is www.worksucksthebook.com, and my book is available on Amazon and other online retailers.
Well, that's an interesting title, Work Sucks. There isn't a single person who hasn't said that at some time in his or her work life. But
right, some just say it more than others.
Yeah. Yes, well, the old feeling is if you say it more than once a day, it's time to find another job.
Exactly.
But
that's why I've had 30 jobs by the age of 45. I left 30 jobs in corporate America, by the time I turned 45 years old, to keep a promise to myself I made as a kid to never settle for a job that sucks. And these jobs that I took, they lasted anywhere from 2 hours to 5.5 years.
Well, I'm going to ask the obvious question. Tell us some of these jobs that you worked at that you liked, and then we'll talk about some that you didn't like.
Well, to be honest, I stopped liking my jobs back in probably 1995 when I stopped as a staff writer for weekly suburban news publications. I'd done that 4 years after school, although the curriculum in college never taught me how to live on the breadcrumbs that a staff reporter in the newspaper business could survive. Didn't teach me that, so I decided to move on to the sales world, and I have never liked a job. It's only been varying levels of suffering and torture.
Well, that's a shame, because I've been a reporter for over 50 years, and I don't think there's a better job in the world than being a reporter. But
right, that's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying, is that I liked being a reporter, and that I enjoyed. It was my passion. It was my background, and there was nothing more rewarding than putting a piece together and seeing it come out in print, knowing people were reading it. It's on the front page. But when I left the business, it was to make more money, and my pursuit of money kind of took me away from writing, and I've been a tortured soul ever since, being in corporate America in the sales world, selling things, everything from waste solutions like dumpster service to shredding services for confidential information. I was a technical recruiter. The list goes on. Advertising sales, the list goes on and on. But I've been in the sales world, and I have never liked the sales job or any of the jobs other than reporting and writing.
Spencer, I so totally agree with you. Every time I've gone away myself into the corporate world, from being a reporter and newsman, I've always run back to it, because there is no greater, I think there is no greater job than being a reporter or an editor. But unfortunately, in this day and age, and by the way, I believe in newspapers more than radio and television, though I have done that as well. But this is about you, not me. But you've come here with a lot of ideas, and the one that I glommed on that I want to start with is the 4-day week. When I started out, I ended up in the 4-day week on the newspaper, which is one of the great times of my life, and I've had it other times. What do you say about the 4-day week?
Well, what I say is, it's better than a 5-day week. And, what I mean by that is that, in order to enjoy life, people need to have an adequate enough amount of personal time to pursue their hobbies and spend time with their family. And with a 7-day week, when you work 5 of them and there's only 2 left, it's just not enough time. By the time you make it down the red velvet ropes and into the front door, it's already last call. There's just not enough time to enjoy life in 2 days, especially when one of those days is spent counting down the explosion to the work week. And so, 4 is better than 5 because, fewer miles is always better for longevity, whether it's a car or a career. And we need to work on a better work-life balance. I mean, the system as it stands now, I'm not a mathematician. I'm not a statistician. Numbers aren't my thing. I'm a writer, but, there's an instinct somewhere deep down in my largely linguistic body that's telling me the fractions are off. And we have a system that is good for the government and the hierarchy, but it's painful for the people to live that way. So just from a spiritual standpoint, a 4-day work week is better than a 5-day work week for the masses. But there's also been studies that have been conducted that show productivity does not suffer from fewer days in the working fewer days of the week. And we can get into that if you like.
Well, we would, but I guess my question is, if you're a small business, which our audience is mainly made up of, 24/7 is the norm rather than the 4-day on and 3-day off world. I mean, the entrepreneurs in our audience will say, for a small business, you have to be 24/7. What do you say to that, Spencer?
Well, I say, I wonder, and I ask those entrepreneurs, how many of those entrepreneurs are truly happy and, do not wish that they had more time to spend with their loved ones and pursue other activities, and how many of them are going to look back at the end of their life and wish they would have done this, wish they would have done that. So that's the first thing I say. I also say that I understand with small businesses, a lot of business owners don't have the opportunity to payroll a large staff. Even if you have a staff, you can't trust the staff as well as you trust yourself to run the business. So I'm not, just living in a fog. I completely understand the value of investing your time in your own business and making it thrive so you can earn a good living for yourself and your family. But there's a lot of bright people in this country, and if we got together we got the right group of people together that weren't tied into greed and power, ulterior motives, we could come up with a system, for even small business owners that allows them to be available and efficient, but still maybe allow them to have a better work-life balance. It's just that, I didn't graduate from the Wharton School of Business. I'm an economist studying the economic impact of a labor-based system like Bozo the Clown's a nuclear physicist. So I don't have those answers, but I do know that there's a lot of bright people who if altruistically motivated, could come up for a system that could actually meet all needs: the financial needs, the time off needs, the needs to thrive in your business. And we should take a look at the system and reevaluate it, because the norm has been the norm for too long.
Oh, those are strong words. We're speaking with Spencer Borisoff. He's got a brand new book out, which I love the title. Spencer, tell us again the title.
Yeah, the title is Work Sucks, A Funny View of a Serious Problem.
Okay. And I'm glad you put it in that basis, because you're right about that. But let's go on your point. Someone once told me no one on their deathbed ever wished they had worked more. But
right.
You're sitting there in your home office working at it. You're a writer, and since I'm a writer too, I know that's not a 4-day-a-week regimen, but rather a 7. Usually, for most writers, a 7-day. But how do you square yourself with it? What do you do to make that work-life balance succeed?
Well, first of all, here's the difference between me as a writer and me in the corporate world, or your audience, who is doing something they like, versus people who are working to survive and not doing something they like. When you find your passion, work ceases being work. The weekend, you don't care if you have 2 days, because when Monday comes, you can't wait to get back at it. So the problem is that the vast majority of the U.S. labor force are in positions that they're not passionate about. And on that scale, they're so far from passion, most of them are near suicidal, that want to suck on an exhaust pipe Monday morning. So that's the big difference. If you find your passion, as let's say, as a writer, I feel totally different if I sit down on Sunday and put together an essay for a magazine publication. I'm focused. Before I know it, the day's over. I had a great day, and I'm rewarded by what I produced. But most people, unfortunately, for many reasons that I believe that I can expound upon, are not doing what they want to do. And the truth of the matter is, Don, when you have to go somewhere and it's not a choice, that it diminishes the appeal of that destination, whether you're forced to go at gunpoint or you're forced to go for another benign necessity like work. Either way, the appeal of that destination is diminished.
That's a good thought. I've got to ponder that a little bit, but in the process, how does one understand that you found a passion rather than something that you enjoy and what needs to be done? You know, people throw around this word passion, and I have a passion for work. But how do you define it?
Well, I define it as something that you've identified you're good at, and something that you've identified is rewarding and fulfilling to you, that you have not found someone else's work and are stuck doing someone else's work under someone else's rules that are meaningless to you, other than the financial reward that comes at the end of it. So, you know, that's pretty much how I look at it. You're passionate about what you do. You're good at what you do. You enjoy what you are doing, and it doesn't feel like work. So, yeah, I understand that, you know, some people just throw it around loosely, but I think it's very important, you know, that not only are you fulfilled by the end product, but that you also are better than most people at it. And I think that in my opinion, that calculation, you know, makes up what you can be passionate about.
That's a really good thought, Spencer. I'd like to go on. Let's talk about other parts of your book. We're speaking with Spencer Borisoff. He's written this fascinating book, Work Sucks. But Spencer, give us a couple of other thoughts you had in the book, besides a four-day week.
Okay, well, basically, the way I look at work is the biggest, baddest bully the world has ever seen, because in adult life, you know, what it does is essentially, if you haven't found your passion again, it takes away your freedom. This country was built on freedom. It's the defining principle of this country, and work takes away your freedom. Again, back to, if you have to go somewhere and you have no choice, it diminishes the appeal of that destination. That's the situation and the scenario most people are in Monday through Friday. And so work takes away your freedom. Now, millions have died for our freedom. I mean, we wrote the Declaration of Independence to declare our freedom, and we wrote the Constitution to protect our freedom. So I ask, what freedom? Is, you know, a couple hours a day and 2 days a week out of a 7-day week, is that freedom? You know, I would like to say, you know, if that's the gift of life, then kick over my Christmas tree and take your present back. It's too damn expensive.
Good thoughts. Keep going, Spencer.
Yeah, sure. You know, in my book, I talk about bosses. That's one of my chapters. And my chapters are actually funny, and they're short, 3 or 4 pages, just giving insights that people can relate to, but they've never heard expressed the way I express it. You might catch it just the way I'm talking. The book is, similarly written. But for instance, bosses, other than the word work, bosses, the second filthiest word, 4-letter word in the English language. Those other words, like the F word and the S word and all those other vulgar words, they could be on the banner at Disneyland relative to the words work and boss. Okay, so just the term boss in and of itself is an offensive term, which implies, 2 people in a common environment where one person is better and more powerful than the other. So just with the existence of bosses, that dooms the possibility of job enjoyment, because nobody likes being told what to do, continually dissected and talked down to, which is the norm in corporate America, with a lack of compassion. And, it's unfortunate. I mean, if my boss told me that I should go to the ice cream parlor and get a triple scoop cone of my favorite flavors, I wouldn't want to do it. Not because I prefer a cup to a cone, but because I don't like being told what to do by another human being. So, that's just conceptually, most people have trouble digesting the boss in the work environment. We discussed that. The need for longer weekends, of course, that goes with the 4 and the 3, work day, work week, diminishing the work week to 4 days on and 3 days off. I mean, we can work it out. It just seems like, why should the weekend be perpetually stuck at the back of the line behind 5 days of torment? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Because the weekend looks so damn sexy. So, that's a few of the things. Like, of course, I address alarm clocks, when the alarm clock goes off. If you have to be jolted out of unconsciousness, out of your dreams to go do something, that's the first injustice of the workday. Sleep is an extreme pleasure. There's very few things in life on the delight meter that rival sleep. I mean, a good meal may rival sleep. Great sex could rival sleep, even not so great sex. Let's just say any unforced sex can rival sleep on the delight meter. But other than that, very few things are as wonderful and enjoyable as sleep. So starting the day being bugled out of bed in the morning is a bad way to get going, and is the seed of a drastic dissension in the workplace. If people wanted to be bugled out of bed in the morning, they would have joined the Army.
I'm sitting here just listening to you because you sound so logical, but I'm sure
that's the first time I've ever been told that in my life.
Well, take it as a compliment and go on from there. But our audience is made up 59% of whom are presidents and/or owners, and they would be saying to you, as some of my friends would, but I like to work and I enjoy working, and what's more, work defines me. How do you answer that, Spencer?
Yeah, well, it sounds like a lot of your audience is their own boss. They run their companies, their small businesses, or they're somewhere up the ladder in the hierarchy of corporate America. And things get easier the higher you get, in the working world. So, absolutely, if someone had the initiative and was inspired enough to start their own business, a lot of those reasons are because of what I've been alluding to. They don't want to be told what to do by another adult. They're an adult. They don't want to be bossed around or take orders from someone else. They had the initiative to start their own business and run it the way they see fit to run it and make their own crucial decisions. It doesn't diminish the importance of the decisions they have to make. It's still crucial to their survival, but they're in charge. And of course, if you're in charge, then you are going to enjoy the situation much more than those who aren't in charge. And unfortunately, even though there's millions of small business owners and business owners in general in the world, they're the minority. Most people are working for someone else, working in a industry that they haven't been able to find their passion, but yet they needed to start earning a living, so they went off to the working world with their hard hat and their lunch pail, and they've been stuck doing something they hate for somebody else their entire life. And those people will never have a chance to enjoy their life because the vast majority of their waking hours is spent doing someone else's work for them. Like Mark Twain said once, a father of American literature, "Cursed is the man who has found some other man's work and cannot lose it." And he's a very smart guy, and that's what I'm talking about.
So we've been talking with Spencer Borisoff. His book is called Work Sucks, which I love the title. And Spencer, your website again for our listeners?
Yeah, it's worksucksthebook.com, where actually you can purchase an autographed copy of my book or a non-autographed copy, as well as going to Amazon or barnesandnoble.com and other online retailers.
Well, a link to your website will be on recalculating.biz tonight, where you can hear this and every other past and future recalculating program. Spencer, it has been an exciting time.
Oh, well, I thank you so much, Don, to you and all your listeners for having me on and letting me into their hearts and their homes and their cars today. So thank you so much. It's been a blast.
In New York this week, 500 managers and bankers from across the fintech world met to discuss the rising use of online financial resource companies. It was the latest of a number of such concaves across the country. What does it mean for small business leaders? Speaker after speaker droned on about the funds available to grow their small businesses. Other panelists talked about the ease such companies are making the loan process. Finding the money to grow can be as short as an hour. Some speakers said the average was 3 days versus going to a more traditional banking resource, which could take up to 3 months. But as one speaker pointed out, small businesses can suffer in one way from the fintech revolution. The personal banking touch that puts the small business leader in physical proximity to the banker, that personal touch that can come in handy should growth plans not work out exactly as expected, is not there. There is an old saying, when you owe enough to the bank, you own the bank. Most banks won't let that happen, but having a personal relationship can ease some issues. Fintech bankers are about doing everything over the internet. For those times when the small business succeeds, this works great. But what happens if they don't? It's harder without that personal touch.
Dan Perkins here with your Recalculating.biz small business tip of the day. So you formed your business and you used an LLC. Do you really know what you want to do and how to get there? Not without a business plan. An old Chinese saying, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there. So here is your Recalculating.biz small business tip of the day. There are a lot of great books on building business plans. I suggest you start simple. As your business grows, you can become more elaborate. I recommend the Business Plan for Dummies, available in local bookstores or at Amazon. If you know nothing about business plans, then a complicated plan may well scare you away from doing one at all. You used to be able to do things by the seat of your pants, but no more. Don't be a dummy. Get a book, and you'll be smarter for it. This has been your Recalculating.biz small business tip of the day. I'm Dan Perkins.
In New York this week, 500 managers and bankers from across the fintech world met to discuss the rising use of online financial resource companies. It was the latest of a number of such concaves across the country. What does it mean for small business leaders? Speaker after speaker droned on about the funds available to grow their small businesses. Other panelists talked about the ease such companies are making the loan process. Finding the money to grow can be as short as an hour. Some speakers said the average was 3 days versus going to a more traditional banking resource, which could take up to 3 months. But as one speaker pointed out, small businesses can suffer in one way from the fintech revolution. The personal banking touch that puts the small business leader in physical proximity to the banker, that personal touch that can come in handy should growth plans not work out exactly as expected, is not there. There is an old saying, when you owe enough to the bank, you own the bank. Most banks won't let that happen, but having a personal relationship can ease some issues. Fintech bankers are about doing everything over the internet. For those times when the small business succeeds, this works great. But what happens if they don't? It's harder without that personal touch.
Thank you for joining us on Recalculating. We hope the information you received on today's episode was helpful to you in starting and growing your business. Please go to our website, recalculating.biz, to contact us, to listen to past shows, and see special offers. Until next time, remember, if you grow, we grow. Join us next week for more helpful ideas to make your business a great success. Recalculating, a program designed to help you be successful.